Good evening everyone and welcome to Poetryspective number 66. Incredible to think this is our 15th online version since COVID started. I'm hosting today. My name's Colin Clark, hidden away underneath my lovely Pride of Our Footscrape mask once again. Lishy's doing fine. We're doing a bit of sharing this week. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the next month on Poetryspective, so we're both pretty busy. And make sure you stay on to watch the whole thing, because there will be some announcements at the end. I'm here today on the top of the beautiful, or halfway up the beautiful Mount Beckworth, as you can see behind me there. This is on Judgewurrung country in central Victoria, where we're currently holed up doing our working from home. Yeah, we've got a great show for you as usual today. I know it's been a bit longer than usual between shows, so we're probably all champing at the bit to get going. We've got some great new features, another international flavour this time with Raewyn Alexander from New Zealand doing her feature, and one of our local favourites, Michael Reynolds, giving his CJ Dennis retrospective. Yeah, we've also got some a returning prodigal son, someone those of you who've been to our shows in Pride of Our Footscrape will recognise. I'll keep you guessing about that one, and a lot of our usual favourites. So sit back and enjoy the show. Maintaining a Poetryspective tradition, me and my buddy here, we're going to be reading one work from the retrospective feature, which this week, as you are aware, is Michael Reynolds. And also one other work by another author. I think you may have heard of this person. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so this is Running from Verbs by Lish Skek. Running from verbs, scraping eyeballs on nouns, consonants and synonyms like a bell resound. Hiding from the adjective in a house of clowns. Walking away from the spoken word, papers on the ground, books invading personal space, poetry resounds, sounds. Lost loves, found loves, talent underground, instigating intellect, wannabe Oxford town. And now, moving on. I chose this poem by Michael Reynolds. This poem is called This Poem. This poem does not rhyme. Okay, it does some of the time. This poem has substance and lots of other words besides. This poem will avoid cliches until the end of time. Damn. This poem talks about itself. A complete waste of a poem, really. This poem has an embarrassing silence. I just made that bit up. This poem goes on too long. Far too seriously, long by half. This poem is really too long. Someone take Michael's pen from him. This poem is getting on my nerves. Luckily, the page is about to fin.
Ruth is dead. She isn't mine to mourn, but I'm sad. Ruth is dead. But we are not, and our children need us as much as they ever needed her. Today I am sad. Tomorrow I start again. Tomorrow we will continue. Got a poem here from a poet I really like called Mary Pauline, Quantum Heresies. This one's called Prophecy. Oh, we'll find someone to blame. This isn't random. Chaos is calculable, iterative. We should have seen it coming. Afternoon fog obscures Twin Peaks, verdant fragrance of earth relinquishing its dominion. Crows overpopulate San Francisco. Convocations grip the olive tree in full avian convulsion, foliage quivering with the rage of corvid premonition. Even technology falls away, nothing but theory remaining. Mist levitates over the salvia like a guru demonstrating science. The second law of thermodynamics promises entropy for every creature, no matter how darkly feathered, no matter how guilty. I'm Dave. Thanks for listening.
If I convince myself that my body is a temple, grazing my soul with razor words, cutting open my sheltered thorns in hopes that grace will blossom, however, to those of I am my own goddess. I ought to worship myself for the God that I am. My own being composes my own world. If I convince myself that the ground I walk on are gravelled in gold, perhaps then I'll worship my body, worship my spirit, worship my own fucking self. I'll be closest to me like a monk be closest to God. If I become a monk under crucial weathers and embrace the leftovers of my own destruction, then I will flourish, and perhaps I'll teach my peers to strengthen my worth as God's taught the people to love them. For I am no God, but a mere person. But a mere person, much to my knowledge, is their own God, and I must worship me, for I am all I could ever be.
This story is called 1935 Strung Up Junkie. I think it's about time I introduced you to my dear friend Lucy. I've known Lucy all my life. She's been drifting in and out of my poetry for years now. Sometimes helpful, sometimes causing a pickle or two. I love you dearly, Lucy. How do I describe Lucy to you? Well, she has a Scandinavian accent, smile, jawline and blonde hair. That colour doesn't come from a bottle. Depending on the day, you may not recognise her. As with my poems, Lucy drifts in and out. I know she had a boy. I've never seen him, but I can see him in her eyes. I know she's done a little time. I can see it in her eyes too. Today she looks like a 1935 strung-up junkie, withdrawn on that downtown jazz on the ride. I'll meet you at Birdland, just me, you and Charlie Parker. Those are the days for a junkie. Syringes the thickness of a pencil, your vein half the size. God, it hurt like hell, but it's worth that moment of affliction, that pleasurable hit. Don't cut my junk with legalised poison. Make it pure for me, man. Syringes were passed around until they crumbled. Lucy, where are you? You drift in and out. What are the outcomes of our lives, Lucy? You're the smarter one, or are you? The master of the one-liner, delivering your message in a few lonely words. Lucy doesn't answer. She never does. Don't get me wrong. Lucy is entertaining. Sometimes she doesn't shut up. Lucy's the only one who understands me. Lucy leant over with a short, slimy, crooked smile and said, Bloodlust ends up in the gutter with Playboy and bent-up Reader's Digest magazines. I know what you mean, Lucy. Words were the killer virus. That's why we're all vaccinated against them. Lucy has never been vaccinated. She speaks with such precision and eloquence. I speak better than Joe, Mario and Jim. Maybe I wasn't vaccinated either. My mother never conformed to nothing or no one. It's too hard to contact her now. She was buried at sea years ago. I was 3.5. I spent years as a deckhand. That's where I met Lucy. We escaped the brutality of the ocean's mean spirit. I'd never seen a photo of my mother. I only imagine she looks like Lucy. I'm 48 now. Lucy hasn't aged a bit. She's always been young in my mind. Lucy, I love you like a mother. This story is called A Road Less Travelled. They did warn me not to travel down this road. I've walked it many times before. I spent a little time in jail. Married twice before, once to Lucy, the other to heroin. Both destructive and shameful. I tend to blame Lucy for my addictions, my obsessive behaviour. I was introduced to her by her mother. She was known as a heroine in a small town just outside of dependency. I became a slave to the mother and the drug. She said, "You want my daughter? You have the drug." Before I could reply, I was travelling with Lucy, Mama and the heroine. It was a road less travelled. By bus, train, finally by air. Mama had control. She injected the drug into my dependent body. She forced me to love Lucy. In return, I gave her my soul. It was time for me to break free from the ravage of the evil drug. I was 23, looked 43. I stood tall in this failing skeleton of mine. I walked on a road less travelled. It was my journey, misguided and confused. I isolated myself in a small town, miles away from dependency, not to be found. A small hut, just water, spam and conviction. I know why they call it cold turkey. Do I have to explain? I hallucinated with guilt and shame for a week. "Lucy, come to me," I would scream. You never came. I chose my road less travelled. It was mine.
Hello, Poetryspective! Eddie Berger here, and the theme for my little reading here is war. Mostly because the piece I want to read by someone else is about war and about spring. Okay, this is a piece by Henry Reed called The Lessons of War, and I'm going to be reading part 1 called Naming of Parts. Today we have naming of parts. Yesterday we had daily cleaning, and tomorrow morning we shall have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of parts. Japonica glistens like coral in all of the neighbouring gardens, and today we have naming of parts. This is the lower sling swivel, and this is the upper sling swivel, whose use you will see when you are given your slings. And this is the piling swivel, which in your case you have not got. The branches hold in the gardens their silent, eloquent gestures, which in our case we have not got. This is the safety catch, which is always released with an easy flick of the thumb. And please do not let me see anyone using his finger. You can do it quite easily if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them using their finger. And this, as you can see, is the bolt. The purpose of this is to open the breech, as you see. We can slide it rapidly backwards and forwards. We call this easing the spring. And rapidly backwards and forwards, the early bees are assaulting the fumbling flowers. They call it easing the spring. They call it easing the spring. It is perfectly easy if you have any strength in your thumb, like the bolt and the breech and the cocking piece and the point of balance, which in our case we have not got, and the almond blossom silent in all of the gardens, and the bees going backwards and forwards. For today, we have the naming of parts. Thank you. That was by Henry Reed. And now, my own piece. This, as I say, is on the subject of war. It is a performance poetry piece of mine called Besieging Settlement Sir, based on the Conquer the World computer games, which we've been seeing a lot of for years. Anyway, Besieging Settlement Sir. Yes, sir! Yes, General! Attack! Aye, aye, Captain! Attack! No more moves, sir! No more moves! Besides, you move like a sissy, sir. No disrespect intended. Our troops are under attack, sir! Your enemy grows strong! Food rations are depleted! The prophets have deceased us! Your legendary legionnaires are languishing lewdly, lecherously lecturing the licentious locals! Your move, sir! Attack! Besieging settlement, sir! Attack! Besieging settlement, sir! Are we? Inside are 7 sly samurai serving sizzling soy sausages, sir! They are not real sausages! The sausage sizzle was unceremoniously supplanted with substitutes, sir! God be praised! The enemy general flees. This will put fear into the enemy's hearts. They have turned into a pack of sissies, sir! Attack! Fire the trebuchets! Attack! Send in the cavalry! Attack! Victory! The enemy is defeated! Victory! This is a glorious day for Rome. Now that you have gained victory over the city's defence forces, you can appoint a governor of your own to rule the population. However, since the chances of rebellion are high, you might be better advised to slaughter everyone. But the women and children are crying, sir! The men are crying like women and are wearing skirts, sir! The general's son is crying into his blouse. The women are crying like men. They wear the pants in their households. The children are hermaphrodites, and the cats look like dogs, sir! This is a glorious day for Rome! Okay, that's it from me. Bye.
Greetings, poetry lovers. I hope you have been enjoying all of the poetry in the open section thus far. And now it is time for our retrospective set, delivered by Michael Reynolds, the splendid man himself, and he shall be reciting the workings of C.J. Dennis. Now, instead of reading Michael Reynolds' bio, I have decided to read a quote from Chris Hemsley, that is on the back of Michael's book upon finding a chair in the forest, because it's damn spiffy, as Michael would say himself. It's spiffy. In the vicinity of the graffiti-cocooned Liverpool scene, adjacent to Pam Ayres, slightly warbling her prayers, and Ellen Wern artfully menacing C.J. Dennis, there is a statue of our very own man, entangled in a tongue-tying pash with Ogden Nash. Beneath it is a simple plaque which states, "The most affable Michael Reynolds, for a laugh or a rhyme, or at least some of the time, turns herald sons into sun heralds." And now, here are a few words about C.J. Dennis, the man Michael is retrospecting. C.J. Dennis, 1876 to 1938, was tagged the laureate of the larrikin because of the popularity of his verse and poetic use of Australian slang. He became famous with the publication of the Songs of a Sentimental Bloke in 1915, and in 1916, The Moods of Ginger Mick. He became a journalist in Adelaide before moving to Melbourne in 1906 and then to Tulangi in 1908. He also published children's verse and nature poetry. So, here is Michael Reynolds reciting the workings of C.J. Dennis. Enjoy!
"What's in a name?" she says. And then she sighs and clasps her little hands and rolls her eyes. "A rose," she says, "be any other name would smell the same. Oh, wherefore art you Romeo, young sir? Chuck your old pot and change your moniker." Doreen and me, we've been to see a show. The swell $2 touch. Bong tong, you know. A chair apiece with velvet on the seat. A slap-up treat. The drama's writ by Shakespeare years ago about a balmy goat called Romeo. "Lady, beyond the moon I swear," says he. Then he climbs up on the balcony and there they smooge a treat with pretty words, like two lovebirds. I nudge Doreen. She whispers, "Ain't it grand?" Her eyes is shining, and I squeezed her hand. What's in her name? Struth, I don't know. Billow is just as good as Romeo. She may be Julia or Juliet. He loves her yet. But if she's the tart he wants, then she's his queen. Names never count. But, I like Doreen. A dearer, sweeter sound I never heard. There's music hangs around that little word. Doreen. But what's I starts to say about the play? I'm off me beat. But when a bloke's in love, his thoughts turn her way, like a omen dove. This here Romeo, he's lurking with a crew, a dead tough crowd of crooks named Montague. His clientest push, what's nicknamed Capulet, they has 'em set. Fair narcs they are, just like them backstreet cliques, except they fight with skewers instead of bricks. What's in her name? What's in a string of words? They scraps in old Verona with their swords and never give a bloke a stray dog's chance. And that's romance. But when we deals it out in Little Lon with bricks and boots, we're low degraded brutes. What's just plain stoush with us right here today is valour, if you're far enough away. Someday, some writer bloke will do the trick with Ginger Mick of Spadger's Lane. He'll be a Romeo when he's been dead 500 years or so. Fair Juliet. She gives a boy the tip. Says she, don't give that crowd of mine no lip, and if you run again a Capulet, just do a get. He swears he's done with Lash. He'll chuck it clean. Same as I done when I first met Doreen. They smooge some more at that. Ah, strike me blue. Give me Joes to sit and watch them too. He'd break away and starts to say goodbye, and she'd sigh, ah, Romeo, and get a stranglehold, just like she'd fear he'd bolt. Next morning, he words a gospel cove about a secret wedding, and they plan it out. He spouts a line about how he's bewitched, then they get itched. Now, here's the bit that fair gives me the pip. She's his for keeps, and yet he lets her slip. Ah, but he makes me sick. A fair gazob is just the glassy on the soulful sob. He'll sigh and spruik and howl a lovesick vow, the silly cow. And when he's got her, spliced and on the straight, he crawls the pitch and tries to kid its fate. Ah, fate me foot. Instead of sloping soon as he was wed off on his honeymoon, him and his cobber, named Mick Curio, they has to go and mix it with that push of Capulets. It's trouble thereafter, and it's trouble they gets. A tug named Tibble, cousin to the skirt, sprags 'em and starts to sling off dirt. Next minute, there's a real old ding-dong go, half a round or so. Mick Curio, he gets one in the neck. Oh, rats, he says, and passes in his check. Quite natural. Romeo gets wet as hell. It's me or you, he yells, and with a yell, plunks Tibble in the gizzard with his sword. How I encored! Put in the boot, I says, put in the boot. Hush, says Doreen. Shame, says some silly coot. Then Romeo, he dunno what to do. The cops get busy like they always do and hang around till he gets blue funk. Then he does a bunk. They wants his tart to wed some other guy. Oh, strike, she says. I wish that I could die. Now, this here gospel cove, he's a pretty shrewd head. Says he, I'll dope ya, then they'll think you're dead. I tips he was a cunning sort, what knew a thing or two. She takes his knockout drops up in her room. They think she's snuffed and stick her in a tomb. Now things get mixed a treat and starts to whirl. Here's Romeo comes back and finds his girl tucked in a little coffin, cold and stiff. He swallows Lysol, throws a fancy fit, head over turkey, and his soul is flit. Then Juliet wakes up and sees him there, turns on the waterworks and tears her hair. "Dear love," she says, "I cannot live alone," and with a moan grabs his pocket knife and ends her cares. "Peanuts or lollies?" says a boy upstairs. There's a very funny insect that you do not often spy, and it isn't quite a spider, and it isn't quite a fly. It is something like a beetle and a little like a bee, but nothing like a woolly grub that climbs upon a tree. Its name is quite a hard one, so you'll learn it soon, I hope. So try. Try, trianti-wanti, trianti-wanti gongolope. It lives on weeds and wattle gum and has a funny face. You pay attention. Its appetite is hearty and its manners a disgrace. When first you come upon it, it will give you quite a scare. But when you look for it again, you'll find it isn't there. And unless you call it softly, it will stay away and mope. So try. Try, trianti-wanti, trianti-wanti gongolope. It trembles if you tickle it or tread upon its toes. It is not an early riser, but it has a snubbish nose. If you sneer at it or scold it, it will scuttle off in shame. But it purrs and purrs quite proudly if you call it by its name and offer it some sandwiches of sealing wax and soap. So try. Trianti-wanti, trianti-wanti gongolope. But of course you haven't seen it, and I truthfully confess that I haven't seen it either, and I don't know its address. For there isn't such an insect, although there really might have been if the trees and grass were purple and the sky was bottle green. It's just a little joke of mine, which you'll forgive, I hope. Oh, try. Try. Trianti-wanti, trianti-wanti gongolope. Good one. The Indian Miner, which C.J. Dennis published in his book in 1935, The Singing Garden. Give me the town and its clamour and clutter. I ain't very fond of the bush, for my cobbers are coves of the gardens and gutter, a tough metropolitan push. I ain't never too keen on the countrified life. It's the hustle and bustle for me and me wife. So I swagger and strut and I cuss and I swagger. I'm wise to the city's hard way. A bit of a bloke and a bit of a bragger, I've always got plenty to say. Learned through knocking about since my people came out from the land at the back of Bombay. When out in the bush, I am never a ranger. There never ain't nothing to see. Besides, them bush birds got no time for a stranger, so town and the traffic for me. I sleep in the gardens and loaf in the street and sling off all day at the fellas I meet. And I swagger and scold and I strut and I swagger and pick up me fun when I can. Or tell off me wife, who's a bit of a nagger, or scrap with the sparrows for scran. A bonzer at bluffin', I give you my word, for between you and me, I'm a pretty tough bird. Thank you. In February 1917, my grandfather wrote a letter to his aunt from the trenches in France. And in that letter, he describes how he and his mates, during the quieter moments, would quote C.J. Dennis to each other. And he actually does write "blast this flame and war" in his letter. And the poem that particular line came out of is from the Moods of Ginger Mick, and I'd like to read that now. It's called War. He says to me, "What's all this flame and war? The papers talks of nothing else but scraps. And what's old England got snake-headed for? And what's the strength of calling out our chaps?" He says to me, "'Struth, don't she rule the sea? What does she want with us?" he says to me. Old Ginger Mick is loading up his truck one morning in the market, feeling sore. He says to me, "Well, mate, I've done me luck." And Rose has asked him, "What about this war?" "I've got a tenner at the two-up school. The game is crook." And Rose is turning cool. He says to me, "How is it for a beer?" I tips him how I've told me wife Doreen that when I comes down to the market here, I dodges pubs and chucks the tipple clean. With her and kid alone up on the farm, she's full of fancies that I'll come to harm. "Henpecked," he says, and then, I dunno. I wouldn't mind if I was in your place. I've half a mind to give cold tea a go. It's no game pouring snake juice in your face, but lad, I have to, with the thirst I've got. I'm going over now to stop a pop." He goes across to find a pint of own, and meets a pal and keeps another down. 10 minutes later, when he starts to roam back to the market with an ugly frown, he sprags a soldier bloke who's passing by, and he says he'd like to dot him in the eye. "Your sort," says Mick, "don't know your silly mind. They lead you like a sheep. It's time you woke. The heads is making piles out of your kind." "Get your head red," said the soldier bloke. "'Struth, you was willin', was that khaki chap. I had me work cut out to stop a scrap." And as the soldier fades across the street, Mick strikes a light and sits down on his truck and chews his fag, a sign his nervous beat, and swears a bit and says he's done his luck. He grouches there 10 minutes, maybe more, then says quite sudden, "Blast the flamin' war." Just then, a motor car goes gliding by with two fat toffs behind two fat cigars. Mick twigs them from the corner of his eye. "I hope," he says, "the Huns don't get my cars. My diamonds too. Don't let me sleep a wink. 'Struth, I'd fight for that sort. I don't think." Then Mick gets up and starts another fag. Well," he says, "it's no affair of mine. If I don't work, they'll pinch me on the vag. But I'm not keen to fight so toffs can dine on pickled olives. Blast the flamin' war. I ain't got nothing worth fighting for. So long," he says, "I got to trade me stock. And when you hear I've got a soldier's job, I give you leave to say I've done me block and got a flock of weevils in me knob." And then, off-handed like, he asks me, "Say, what are they slinging soldiers for their pay?" I tells him, and he says to me, "So long. Some day this rabbit trade will get me beat." And Ginger Mick shoves through the market throng and gets his barrow out in the street. And as he goes, I hear his gentle roar, "Rabbi! Wild Rabbi! Blast the flamin' war!"
Thanks, Michael. Beautifully read, as always. Enjoyed your costume. And and the personal touch on the last poem was really nice. So thanks for that. I really enjoyed that very much. Now we're back to the open section, and we've got a little international surprise for you, a little treat. Even Lish doesn't know about this. You may recall in last Poetryspective, number 65, Tim Evans gave a really great retrospective of Harry Baker from the UK, who's a World Poetry Slam champion, no less. Well, we have a little treat. We've now got a reciprocal arrangement of Harry Baker himself reading Tim Evans. So, back to the open section.
I think I am Overthinking by Tim Evans, a lovely man who I just met on the internet. I don't know much about many philosophers, but there was this bloke called Rene Descartes. He said, I think, therefore I am, or in Latin, cognito ergo something or other. I think much more than most. I think too much, that's not a boast. So does that mean I am more am? Does that ergo some expand? I think overthinking repetition left me thinking I am more am than I am. I think strangers judge me when they don't know who I am. Someone much more cleverer than me said I need to think more existentially, and it's more I doubt I am, so therefore I must be, or self-doubt is my speciality. I'll happily out-doubt anybody, probably, maybe, on a good day. Thinking doesn't make the thought true, and doubly doubting's just a point of view. Both overdone and left me bruised. Got the value of my I am confused. So when the thinking and the doubt is through, I might find out what I can do. Maybe I can talk with you.
This poem is called Muesli in Dorian Mode, Part 2 of the Breakfast Cycle. Last night I dreamt that I was a box of muesli. I sat despondent on the breakfast bar surrounded by my family. My mother came to me bearing yogurt in which to drown my raisin-filled ennui. I am whole, and yet I am scattered. I am decimated into many bowls of clay. Like Judas Iscariot, I am assailed by silver. Like Rasputin, I am drowned. Like King Louis, devoured. And yet I can still remember the summers on the windowsill, looking out as the dawn breaks on a warm and grateful morning, listening to the idle chatter and the ritual of change, the caffeine metamorphosis of dreamer to private citizen. And I take pride in my role here, the arbiter of sleep and wake and the true prophet of the sun. My followers bring me gifts of milk and honey, cranberries and almonds, every cafe a temple, every kitchen table an altar. That's pretty good. This is an older poem of mine, and it kind of shows. It's called A Night on the Town. I'm not talking about my generation, because that bullshit is cliched self-pity disguised as anthropological insight. Nothing more than a circle jerk of social media commentary, because apparently that's a job now. Latter-day Hollywood gossip rag gone viral, catering to a digital Marlowe wannabe. The great Dan Brown mystery of Miley Cyrus' smile. The gaping maw of eternal self-affirmation. Heartbeats give way to backbeats from a mezzanine songster projecting a spiral of semi-popular though shitty covers. Ditch that for the fresher sound, the rollicking gyp-rock rhythm that revolves on the whitewashed walls of industrial clout. That was the fusion. Sway like a revolving door, the stained glass bottles assembled for the glamorous review, ticking lists of disambiguated hopes, the atavistic traits of frenzy fever dancing, habitual habilis of the primal rhythm. Applaud softly, ever softly, and breathe the fresh night air intermingled with expensive smoke and hazardous conversation, switchblade tongues that went snicker-snack in the dark. Feel that rhythm. Shake your bones and cast aside all prior notions of normality in the wake of harmonious discord. As you were, your pockets and wallet were starving, and the riptide reap of cash check credit is rolling like a toxic waste barrel across a clear-cut horizon. Standing there with violence on her mind and a pistol on her hip, she smiled beneath a blue moon. Not even the atom bomb could kill Dean Martin. Our futures were not writ in fire or water or even by Leonard Cohen. Our futures were writ in blood, and red and black, and sorrow and abandon. Where will you be when Clive Palmer eats the last can of baked beans? Where will you turn when the free-range terrorists kick down the door to our imagination? There is a place above the clouds, where free-range stem cells romp and play all day long. A place where happiness is a beast that is slain and stuffed and mounted and possibly pressed into service as a suppository of wisdom. That place is within us. Together, we can pull the wisdom from our collective assholes and make do. Thank you, Poetryspective. Be good to yourselves, everyone.
Hallo Leute, heute lese ich ein kleines Gedicht Thema Butter vor. Ein wichtiges Thema, ein Thema, das für mich so am wichtigsten ist, dass ich nötigt war, eine ganz andere Sprache zu lernen, meine ganzen Gefühle zu ausdrücken. Und so, ein deutsches Slam-Gedicht Thema Butter. Ein leckeres Essen mit Butter ist besser. Von Hey bis zum Hessen wird Leckerei leckerer, mit Butter zu gießen. Und alltäglich Fresser wird einen fein schmecken, nur dann, wenn etwas mit Butter gegessen ist. Ja, Keksen und Wecken und Brötchen und Strudeln, Kartoffeln, Kürbisse und Zwiebeln und Kräuter und ebenso Butter mit Butter sind besser. Wenn ich Butter sehe, muss ich ja gestehen, mein Herz fängt zu klopfen an, meine Beine zu hüpfen an, ich fange zu bangen an, Blut kommt meine Wangen an, von süßen Verlangen dann zu schmieren und streicheln und streuen und riechen, zu spüren und fühlen, oh magischer Duft. Es hängt in der Luft, ich laufe und springe und tanze und singe, oh köstliches Ding, oh schmeckhaftes Essen. Infolgedessen ist Butter, ist besser. Dankeschön.
Oh, alrighty. This is a song that I wrote in 2012. It was inspired by a young lady who I was talking to one night, and she was telling me that she was hearing voices inside of her head that she really didn't understand, and but she trained them. So instead of saying kill yourself, slash your wrists, go smash the place up, etc., etc., she trained her voices to tell her to do positive things. And guess what? It worked. So for all you crazy bastards out there, say positive things about yourself and you won't be fucking mad anymore. Well, that's how I reckon. And this song just sort of sums it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. The voices in my head, they laugh when I laugh. The voices in my head, they cry when I cry. The voices in my head, they live as I live, and hopefully they will die when I die. La 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 la. One voice is a lady, another voice is a gent. Another voice tells me to drink my beer until all my money is spent. One voice speaks in Spanish, which is cool cause I do too. I do not wish my voices to vanish, cause I wanna share my voices with you. The voices in my head, they laugh when I laugh. The voices in my head, they cry when I cry. The voices in my head, they live as I live, and hopefully they will die when I die. La 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 la. La 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 la. One voice taught me algebra, another voice taught me math. Another voice told me to wipe my bum, but don't mention the psychopath. One voice told me to play my guitar. Another said you can write songs. Another says you can write poetry, but my favorite says to smoke bong after bong after bong. The voices in my head, they laugh when I laugh. The voices in my head, they cry when I cry. The voices in my head, they live as I live, and hopefully they will die when I die. La 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 la. La 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 la. I wish you could hear my voices. I wish that you could hold my hand. The voices give us so many choices. I knew that you would understand. One voice told me to play my guitar. Another said you can write songs. Another says you can write poetry, but my favorite says to smoke bong after bong after bong. The voices in my head, they laugh as I laugh. The voices in my head, they cry when I cry. The voices in my head, they live as I live, and hopefully they will die when I die. La 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 la. La 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 la. I wish you could hear my voices. I wish that you would hold my hand. The voices give us so many choices that I knew that you would understand. One voice told me to play my guitar. Another says you can write songs. Another says write poetry, but my favorite says to smoke bong after bong after bong. The voices in my head, they laugh when I laugh. The voices in my head, they cry when I cry. The voices in my head, they live as I live, and hopefully they will die when I die. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. There we go. Hope you enjoyed that one. If you didn't, stiff fucking shit.
Hello again. And now it is time for our second feature tonight, Raewyn Alexander. And here are a few words about the grand woman herself. Raewyn Alexander is a poet, novelist, short story writer, essayist, blogger and non-fiction writer. In Tamaki, Maracora, Auckland, Aotearoa, New Zealand, descended from French, Irish, Scots and English people. Glam Rock Boyfriends, her third novel, is available worldwide on Amazon, and also Our Mother Flew Unassisted. Latest poetry collection, along with Nothing and Nowhere But Love, a full-colour hand-drawn comic in prose poetry for Kindle. She lectures and takes other writing and art classes. Her work has won prizes, been shortlisted for major competitions, and in 2014 she was a prize winner in the Miles Hughes Achievement Award. Alexander's blogs are read worldwide, and she at times publishes internationally too. Having performed poetry many times in Melbourne, Australia, with gifted poets there, and also around America when she travelled to many places overland, meeting USA writers she'd worked with online for 13 years. This is Raewyn Alexander.
Wicked were leader, the snake queen, I've seen her, with snakes lying on her lap like cats, snapping square-edged fingers for emphasis, while big flapping herons flopped up and out and into the azure. Wicked were leader, so sure by the lake, bopping boogie-woogie wah-wah-woo, more blue than a rainy Sunday after a blood-drunk Saturday night, frightening all the boys with her hip swaying, saying, I am the worst, the cursed, the woman in every warning, warming my innocent bones in the free sunshine, a finer sight than ever flew or played the harp in heaven, and I'm getting to you. Wicked Willita drew out and gave us cryptic presents, blindfolds wove from shed snakeskin, and kite strings wound round carved bamboo. Last night's Dream Corrected was produced by Pretend Genius Pricks in New York State, and this was some time ago. This is one of mine in here. Thunder debates with ice and lightning leads. This mosh pit of weather punks the air. finding the finer places your indented speak, dark in a plink of hot water overflow, plumbers' cell phones red hot and elusive. I sleepwalked into the eyes of it, drenched with what used to be promises, your dark ghost tossing new hair. Insurance could cover this if it had a heart. Instead, there's this patched memory and floods, the lift after a storm synapses a new channel, a pour of books and this chesting voice, reaching out to known strangers with my softer hands. And Poetry New Zealand Yearbook is now how Poetry New Zealand presents itself every year. It's a beautiful volume. And this was one that I wrote as things started to get a bit tougher. This is the 2017 one. And perhaps some of you will be able to identify with this sentiment in this. It's celebrating blank. Fresh stationery in my mind, notes about us burning under intense public scrutiny. Messages from hell in black and white, the word hospital with shouts in it, where quiet threatens to hush everything. But nobody said this year would like us, and parties tell such great lies, then so many days fall on your head, evil rain running through the city of holes, doodling pictures of tabloid romances, countless phones charged with slam gossip. We'll never get this day back. It's like money you lend a hitchhiker. Trying to find a place where nobody hits you, out of sight, underground, in a silo. Make me into a grain of wheat. And I can say that I was a bestseller now, because this was on the bestseller list for 6 months. These editors chose one of my poems for it. And it's an essential New Zealand poem. It was brought out by Random House. There's some great poems in here, I must say. This is a poem which I think was in my Museum of Lost Days book. They chose them from various books. Old news curling in the sun. This wasn't wood after all, or bricks, or sensible. Scissors shaped a paper doll's house. The wind had its way as a choir from hell. Get out! Get out! Before the thing goes up! Standing on the lawn, holding hands, sun rising and the house gone. A charcoal line across our island, belted children in the back seat, screeching out windows. Insurance paid for the car. We want to live on the water. Those of our friends still alive are at the road with cups and candles. We rip open small towns with a kiss. And I had a challenge to write a sestina for this volume here. It's produced in America. I think it's the University of New England Press. I went on a cruise over to America to see these writers that I knew there. And I've been working with for 13 years online. And this happened. This rather happened, this poem. This is a true story. Lightning storm at sea. Out the window across the boundless Pacific Ocean swell, a deep grey bundle of furious crackle and noise. Between water and heaven, spitting fire in place, a churning column, kilometres of reaction. When one air mass meets another of different temperature, and it'd be simple to make this a metaphor. Oh yes. Something about passion and evening rendezvous, yes. The way lovers often fight with each other at first swell, long before they admit a little softness or find a kiss temperature. Their momentum bigger than either and fated noise. We're not figures of speech, however, but flesh and history in reaction. Fragility obvious in how we package our words to place. some tough or startling, oh so artful tangles of place. The manner each attempts to dust off distance, yes. Meanwhile, between us, a mystery so at sea, it's a flagged reaction. Fire and roar, a roiling dark mass, fizzing swell. For mermaids, a light and sound show noise. Measure the meaning of each word with its temperature. Personal weather, bright in mind's factories, temperature, where each labours separately to push defences into place. Anywhere silence could threaten to crack this noise. Proven over and over again, we collide with talent intact, yes. Aftershocks, a kind of lap on separate shores and swell. Electronic messages sent like sparks by flint reaction. While shock rules our regions, share uproar reaction. Two people wired in different countries and temperature. What ease possible with such secrecy obvious and swell? Routine renews interest, diversions of normalcy in place. We each find stoves and cars and careers and wordplay, yes. In the background of each humdrum, the heart's noise. When the universe arrived with a bang, it left an echo of noise. Every moment we move away from the beginning, a reaction. Birds relay messages to each other whether we notice or not, yes. Our inner worlds linked to some greater pulse and temperature, each step or gesture as kind or cruel as we believe the place, closer and closer to some beach with the tide's relentless swell. After a storm, the air cleared shares a rainless temperature. We could roll away these clouds and fiery pointed words in place, landed on a raft of remains to discuss a direction in the swell. I really enjoy writing about relationships and journeys and things like that. I had this published by Earl of Seacliff. It's a lovely little book, Museum of Lost Days. It's out of print now. And each segment has a drawing to start it off here like this. So this is Fossils and Skeletons of Extinct Affairs. And I really enjoy drawing and painting and so on, as well as writing. This is technology or transport, and since this is going to Australia, I'll read something out of there. This section here. I could be made of glass, seeing this through. Gravity and ancient grip. Glass falls slowly to the ground over centuries, he told me, while we watched the weather change. Over the demolition yard windows stacked in rows, imagine all the views. I could be spread that thinly. I could be framed. I could cut or open, glazed, hot then cool. A trick of the light mirror, transparent enough already for anyone to see what they wish. Yeah, I'm really proud of this little book. It's so sweet. I remember this was one of my first major things that happened in publishing, and I spent ages in the lounge in the sun with pages on the floor trying to figure out which ones I'd send in for it. Days and days, hours and hours. This one's about my children, one of whom is filming this. Both my children saved my life, no matter what about morning sickness. And yes, the head crown's pain. I think about another baby, blue nights and dawn surf. Sometimes you deny sleep, a dream pacing sense, winning a trick you like much better, forgetting mundane money, the groans of neighbours stuffed with television. Important words stop me, not more important, just important and easier, much easier. Writing's easier than having children. Though I don't know, who knows? At this stage of my life, I'm so ancient, I'm not sure of anything anymore, which is quite a refreshing feeling, to be honest. And greetings to everybody in Melbourne and the world. And lovely that Elizabeth Leach-Skeck asked me to be in this Poetry Perspective with other poets. I think Michael Reynolds from Melbourne, the gentleman of poetry, takes great photos as well. So Thanks. Kia ora. Arohanui. This is Zine Hope, where I do a lot of my work, and I have some of my visual art and other people's art. I have a painting from Australia up there in the corner, actually. It's from a St Kilda gallery. There you go. Nice raspberry jam.
Thanks, Raewyn. That was just exquisite. I think felt like a personalised invite into your world, which is really nice. And I'm sure plenty of people in lockdown in Melbourne really enjoyed it and really felt like they'd got out of the house almost vicariously. That was really great. Thanks. Okay, now it's time to move on to some more fabulous stuff in the open section. Do enjoy.
Hi, I'm Anne, and tonight I'm going to be reading from The Raewyn by Edgar Allan Poe. And tonight only, the part of The Raewyn will be played by a pukiko, which is a New Zealand purple marsh hen, and the part of the bust of the Greek god Pallas will be played by this grey bust of an African gentleman. In addition, the part of Deep Night Darkness will be played by Daylight. Thank you. The Raewyn. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of something gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here, I flung the shutter. when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped the stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art short no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled at this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour, nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me. As my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store. Caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed by some unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, my God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Then quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of the lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above thy door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and quit the bust from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. And the lamplight o'er him streaming casts his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Thank you.
This piece is called It's the Money, Honey. Let's talk about money. If I want to send you money, I have to use a bank. So do you. My bank benefits and knows what I've done, and your bank benefits and knows what you've done. My government also knows what I've done, and your government also knows what you've done. Aren't banks good though? Ha ha ha! They've been convicted recently and globally of so many major crimes that they're on a first name basis with the prison warden. Well, they would be if they went to prison, of course. But no, we reserve prison for Indigenous children who shoplift. A government's good? It depends. Are you white and wealthy? Great! Governments are good. They're great. Are you not wealthy? Do you require asylum? Do you hate war? Are you a visa holder in the middle of a pandemic? Have you ever been homosexual? Yes? Well, then no. The government is not quite so good. Is money important? Yes. Yes, indeed. Because some ability to facilitate the exchange of goods is a basic survival requirement. And money is controlled by banks and government? Yes. And this is good? No. No. See above. Is there instead a public money for the people that is not controlled by these banks and governments? Yes, actually. What is it called? It is called Bitcoin. Who runs that? Mathematics runs that. And rarely does mathematics have an agenda or profit motive. Oh my God, the banks must be fuming. I think you're right there. Indeed, until recently, the banks said Bitcoin was a scam. But the public money did not go away. And now the banks are also starting to work with the public money. And what about the government? They don't understand it completely yet. But being governments, they've worked out how to tax it. God bless them. Some things never change.
Have you seen the bush by moonlight? From the train go rushing by, hear a patch of glossy water, there a glimpse of a mystical sky. Have you heard the still voice calling, yet so warm and yet so cold? I'm the mother bush that bore you. Come to me when you are old. Did you see the bush below you, sweeping darkly to the range? All unchanged and all unchanging, yet so very old and strange. Did you hear the bush a-calling when your heart was young and bold? I'm the mother bush that nursed you. Come to me when you are old. Through the long vociferous cutting, as the night train swiftly sped, did you hear the gray bush calling from the pine ridge overhead? You have seen the seas and cities, all seems done and all seems told. I'm the mother bush that loves you. Come to me when you are old.
Well, that brings us to the end of another Poetryspective, number 66. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I think the standard of videos and content that we get sent just keeps on getting better and better. So that's really great. Thanks, Raewyn Alexander, for your wonderful feature, and also Michael Reynolds. Very much enjoyed your feature too. Yeah, it was nice to see Baz back on board. And also, a special thank you to our surprise international feature, Harry Baker. So yeah, no, thanks for all of those people who've really helped make this a really great video presentation. Okay, announcements time. So yeah, I think I said at the beginning we've got a number of announcements. I've got so many I've had to write them down. So firstly, the next edition of Poetryspective, number 67, is in 2 weeks' time, on the 27th of October. We have Amy Badassian as the feature for that one, so that should be really fantastic. And we've just announced, booked Josh Cake as the retrospective feature. Not quite sure who he's going to be performing yet, but that should be pretty good. So really looking forward to that. But even before that, we have another event hosted by Poetryspective. So, due to all the great work that Lisha's done with Poetryspective, she's been asked to host a heat of the Australian Poetry Slam. That's going to be on Tuesday, the 20th of October, so next Tuesday.
Greetings, poetry and spoken word lovers. This is a brief announcement to tell you about the Australian Poetry Slam. Okay. Here at Poetryspective, we are very proud to be hosting the Victorian heats of the Poetry Slam, and of course that will be happening live on Zoom on October 20, next Tuesday at 8 p.m. To register for this, you can contact me on the Poetryspective page in the messenger app there, or you can email me at sketsdom@bigpond.com. That's SKECDOM @bigpond.com, or you can just try me on Messenger on Facebook, because that is usually available as well. Okay, and for those of you who do not know much about the Australian Poetry Slam, here is some information for you. Australian Poetry Slam is a live literary performance program organised by Word Travels. With 60 heats across the nation, the best slammers perform each year for the chance to be crowned Australian Poetry Slam National Champion. A talented wordsmith will emerge from the heats to perform in the Victorian final on October 30 to compete for a place in the APS National Final on Saturday, November 14, the closing event of Story Week 2020. So it is a prestigious award, and I encourage you to enter whether you slam or not. I can honestly say that in my more than 20 years of attending poetry slams that I have seen all different types of verse win, from quiet and still to ostentatious and vivacious and fun. So I think as long as you're writing from here, you're in with a chance. Okay. Now, as to the rules, those have been put up in the event page for the Victorian Slams, and to make it easier for you to find, it is titled Poetryspective Presents Australian Poetry Slam Heats. There is also a link to the APS page, so you can read the rules there as well. I will be seeing you live on Zoom at 8 p.m. next Tuesday for the APS Victorian Slam Heats. Who shall reign victorious? We'll find out. Okay then, see you there.
And then our final one, those of you who've been around Poetryspective for a while will know that in November we have our annual Poetryspective Retro Slam competition. We are going ahead with that this year. It will be online, of course, unfortunately. A few different changes this year. So there will be an online registration, which we'll have up and running once our Slack webmaster gets his shit together. Bad boy. So I'll get that up and running soon, and look out on the social medias on Facebook and Instagram and so on for that. Obviously, this is a good time to start planning ahead who you might be, which poet you might be wanting to perform in the Retro Slam. So yeah, bit of chance to get ahead. I'll just give you a bit of an idea of some of the slight changes to the rules. It's still going to be 2 rounds, so we'll still have a round of all the entrants, and then a final. The dates are going to be the 10th and 11th of November, so it'll be over 2 consecutive evenings. So all the main event will be on the all the videos will show on the first show, and then the finalists will be shown on the second show. We're going to have a slight change this year that we're not going to be asking people to perform the same poem twice, and we're going to be asking them to perform 2 different poems, but by the same author, by the same poet. And both of those videos will need to be submitted in advance. And the submission deadline is going to be the 4th of November. So make that note in your diary, because obviously late submissions will not be accepted. We can't be as flexible as we sometimes are with this show. It will be 2 videos. When there will not be any visual effects or music allowed in the Retro Slam event, and each video must be filmed in a continuous take. So no cuts or anything like that. We've got some absolutely top-notch judges. I'm going to leave Lish to announce those at the next Poetryspective. And the other addition that we've got this year is we will be having a People's Choice Award. So everybody who watches on the first night will get the chance to vote for their favourite. And whichever of those videos gets the most votes, Lish is making a new prize for for the People's Choice. So that will be a chance for everybody to win, right? So even if the poem doesn't get through to the final, it can still potentially win the People's Choice Award. All right, okay. With that, thanks Lish, thanks everyone for submitting once again. More fantastic works. Do stay safe. Look after yourselves, everyone. And from Poetryspective 66, signing off from Colin out in beautiful central Victoria with the birds tweeting. Stay safe, look after yourselves. Have a good week, and we'll see you many times soon.